So this is the Cooking Matters recipe demonstration as hosted by Transform Fresno, but also Fresno Metro Ministry. So we have Luis Hernandez here. He is going to be demonstrating us on how to do a balanced and healthy Cooking Matters recipe, and it is going to be a black bean and veggie quesadilla. So
actually, it's about that. It's going to be a veggie stir fry rice. Sorry about that.
That's right. Yes. Yeah. So it's going to be a veggie stir fry rice. So with that being said, I'll go ahead and pass it over to Luis Hernandez so he can begin his demonstration. Take it away, Luis.
Awesome. Great. Thank you, Leo. Yeah, so my name is Luis Hernandez. I'm a Food to Share project coordinator. And then over here, I have my lovely co-coordinator.
Hello, I'm Jennifer. Nice to see you all.
And so today we're going to be working together to do a veggie stir fry and rice. And so, during our Cooking Matters courses, we make sure that we have a lot of fun doing hands-on activities. It's definitely learner-centered, making sure that we talk at the level of our participants, because some people already come in with certain knowledge into the classroom. And we also want to make sure that it's practical. So everything that we talk about in class, as far as like nutrition, shopping smart, we make sure to incorporate it right after we talk about nutrition in the cooking portion of the class. And then we also just want to remind participants that recipes are just frameworks. Some vegetables aren't going to be appealing to your whole family, but it doesn't mean you have to scrap the whole recipe. It's just about thinking critically about which vegetables you want to switch out and having really good communication with the rest of your family members, especially your kids, as they're trying to get acclimated to new and healthy foods. Last but not least, we of course use My Plate as our framework. My Plate has 5 food groups. They are fruits, vegetables, grains, protein, and dairy. And so we want to make sure that our participants know that they should be eating from all of the food groups every week, every day, I should say, and then to incorporate at least 3 out of the 5 food groups per meal to make sure that those meals are balanced. All right. And so Leo went ahead and put the recipe in the chat. So if you want to take a look at the recipe as we cook, you can go ahead and do that. But right now I'm going to go ahead and tilt my camera down and we'll go ahead and get started on the cooking portion. Okay. So like I mentioned before, we're going to be doing the veggie rice stir fry, and I think that's good. I think that's a good angle. Perfect. Okay, so you can either use chicken or tofu for this particular recipe, and today we're going to try out tofu. The beauty of Cooking Matters is that it allows us to try new and different foods. Oftentimes, people have never tried tofu before, so that's why we try to incorporate it in our recipe in class. And then I already went ahead and did the brown rice. Brown rice is a whole grain. It contains more nutrients and fiber. And of course, fiber is what helps clean out our intestinal tract. We just kind of think of it as a broom that helps clean out our body. Okay. So we already got the brown rice ready because it takes about 40 minutes to cook. Same proportion of rice to water as you would with traditional white rice, but it just takes a little longer just because that grain is thicker. Okay, so it takes 40 minutes as opposed to about 20 minutes for white rice. All right. Okay, so now that we got our tofu, we got our veggies all cleaned, I'm going to go ahead and start patting dry the tofu here. I use extra firm tofu for this. Okay, just so it'll stay intact and there's not as much water, but I still want to get some of that water out. So when I add the sauce later, it's going to be able to absorb more of the sauce. Tofu doesn't really taste like anything. It's very, very bland for sure. Let me turn off that alarm. That means that my rice is ready. I'm going to turn it off. We're all good. But yeah, tofu doesn't really have a lot of flavors to it. It absorbs whatever flavors you add to it, but you want to try to get as much of that water out. And so I'm just going to pat it until I feel like these paper towels are pretty moist, okay? All right, so I think that's good. Go throw away these paper towels. And so we usually try to cut these in little cubes. I'll go ahead and cut them in half like that. And so then I'll cut it 3 times lengthwise, and then widthwise, I'm going to do it 4 times. And so that way we get these nice cubes ready. Don't worry too much if they're not the exact same size. It should pretty much cook all evenly, okay? So we got the tofu. I'm gonna go ahead and start with the veggies now. In class, we always want to make sure that we have proper cutting techniques, which means making the claw, right? If we're teaching kids, we usually want to cut the vegetables in half. As you can see, you know, carrots kind of roll around. If you have little ones at home and they're barely learning how to cut, the best idea is to cut those vegetables in half for them. So here we got our carrot cut in half, and now I'm able to cut 1/4 size pieces. So a fourth of an inch would be about half of your fingernail. Okay, so if you don't have a ruler, I don't think I have a ruler at home, so you can use a half of your thumbnail to measure out a 1/4 of an inch. Okay, just make sure that they're all even. And then with the knife, I know a lot of people try to cut with their index finger on top, but that doesn't give us a lot of control. I usually tell people have your thumb on top or to the side, whichever feels most comfortable. But either of these positions will give you the most control. Okay, so here we got our carrots. Making sure to watch out for your fingers as you get closer and closer. And then same thing with the celery. Cut the ends off. And then I usually cut them in half. Whenever you're cutting things like bell peppers or trying to cut things in half that aren't too thick, kind of like celery, you can always use the tip of the blade. This will always be the sharpest part. That'll be the sharpest part of the knife. But if you need more force, something like this, you always want to cut with the thickest part. This is where you apply the most force. All right, so we got our carrots. So with the broccoli, because I just want the florets, right? You can use the whole broccoli, but for today, I'm just going to go ahead and use the florets. You're going to use the sharpest part, okay? So you usually want to hold it and then face down, and then you'll have nice little trees at the bottom. All right, it's like you got a nicely pruned tree there, and then you got all of your broccoli florets, okay? Now, the next part is going to be the jalapeno and the garlic that we're going to use for seasoning, okay? So with the jalapeno, I'll cut the top off, and then I'll make sure to use the sharpest part of the blade to kind of just shave this jalapeno. Okay, just go nice and slow. All right. And so with jalapenos, things like bell peppers, you kind of want to use the sharpest part of the blade. And then whenever you're not using your knife, if you've been noticing, I always make sure that the edge, the sharp edge is pointed away from me. All right, and so for this one, If you use the sharpest part, it'll cut all the way through. If you use the thicker part, I always feel like it stays together, and it's really annoying when I'm cooking like bell peppers, jalapenos, and they're all stuck together. So we're just going to dice these into small pieces. The jalapeno is what we're going to use in our sauce. So I'm going to add it to our sauce in just a second. The sauce, it's kind of like a teriyaki sauce. We're using low sodium soy sauce for this particular recipe. We're going to add cornstarch to our sauce to thicken it up. To sweeten it, we're going to add just 1 tablespoon of brown sugar. In class, we don't necessarily demonize any particular foods. I know I'm adding sugar to this particular recipe, but that sugar is going to be cut up into 4 servings. Okay, so it's not going to be that much sugar at all. And if you notice on the website, if you click on it, all of the Cooking Matters recipes have nutrition facts. So if you're worried about how much sodium you're intaking, how much saturated fat, if you're diabetic, you're watching out for your sugars and your carbs, you can look all of that up online as well when you do the recipes. Almost done. Okay. Same thing with the garlic. Whenever you want to try to cut up garlic, you want to use the sharpest part to mince it. You're going to cut the ends off. Once I'm done cooking the veggies and the tofu together for a few minutes, I'm going to go ahead and add the garlic towards the end. You always want to add garlic towards the end because it'll burn up. It'll burn up, and then it'll have like this very, very bitter taste, and it's even worse when you're biting into a piece of garlic. So make sure that whenever you're cooking with garlic, try to add it towards the end. Right, I think that's pretty small. Okay, so before we get started on the cooking portion, I'm going to go ahead and mix everything that we need for the sauce. So here I already measured out a 1/4 cup of soy sauce. In a separate bowl, I have some dark brown sugar, and I have the cornstarch as well. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and add it to this bowl. Try to get all that cornstarch out so it thickens up. I'm going to add a little bit of ginger. This is part of, making sure that you're not stuck to your ways, and it's okay to change things up. I'm going to add some ginger to the sauce, and I'm going to also add it to the veggies as they cook as well. Okay, so I'm going to mix it up a little bit. Let me go and turn that on. Okay, that should be the last time it goes off. And then I'm going to add the jalapenos right now too. And jalapenos they're not too hot. We always think like they're going to be really hot unless you're like grilling them, like for jalapeno poppers. They're not going to be that hot, especially if you remove the seeds. They're not going to be too hot. If you do want some spice, you can always add some serrano chilies. That would be really good for this particular recipe. All right, so once everything's nice and mixed, then we can go ahead and get started on cooking. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and switch things over. I'm going to grab this, move my cutting board over, and I'm going to start off with the tofu. All right, so I'm going to just use 1 tablespoon of canola oil. We always use canola oil in class because it's very economical compared to olive oil, and it doesn't burn as fast. the olive oil has a low smoking point. It has a low smoking point. So as you're cooking with olive oil, you want to start decreasing the heat as you cook. But with canola oil, it has a oh, I'm sorry, I misspoke. The olive oil has a low smoking point, so it's going to burn at a lower temperature. Canola oil does have a higher smoking point, so it won't burn as fast. So we usually use canola oil. It's more economical. It's like when I go to Winco, it's always $1.88. It's never going to be more than $2 for a giant container of canola oil. Okay, so I'm gonna let the oil heat up a little bit, and then I'm gonna go ahead and add the tofu. I'm gonna add a little bit of ginger right now too. All right, looks plenty hot. I'm gonna go ahead and add the tofu. And then the secret with the stir fry is that you got to make sure that the heat is like on medium high heat. And as the name suggests, you want to keep stirring. If you don't keep stirring, everything's going to burn. It's about constantly stirring. If you have a wok at home that facilitates things, we don't usually suggest that in cooking matters because we're teaching families from different walks of life, no pun intended, and we want to make sure that we're sensitive to that fact because not everybody has the luxury to go out and buy a wok. So we can still do a pretty decent stir fry using a regular saucepan. Just got to make sure that you're constantly stirring, and don't feel bad if like your tofu breaks apart. That happens. It's all going to taste the same once it goes down. Okay. If you feel like it's burning a little bit, you can decrease the heat a little bit, but it should be fairly hot. It's already starting to brown here. You cook this for about like 5 minutes, then you can add your veggies, but constantly stir it. As you can see, it's already starting to stick a little bit, and I'm trying to avoid that as much as possible. This past week during Cooking Matters, we talked to our parents and we asked them, hey, how did those mini pizzas and turkey tacos turn out? Well, they said that their kids didn't like it, but it wasn't necessarily anything wrong with that recipe, right? It was one ingredient. It was either, oh, they didn't like carrots in the turkey tacos, or they didn't like mushrooms in the mini pizzas. So it's just about thinking critically, okay, well, what would your kids prefer? And so we actually asked one of the kids what would they prefer. And they didn't know. They didn't know what they would want. So it's okay to just add extra vegetables that they do like that's already included in the recipe. So the mini pizzas, for example, had bell peppers and tomatoes. So you could just add extra bell peppers and tomatoes. If they're not unsure, or if they don't feel adventurous that particular week, just go ahead and stick to what they know and add extra veggies of what they do like. Okay, I think it's starting to heat up quite a bit. I'm gonna go ahead and add my veggies here. Usually don't time the cooking time for the veggies anymore. I just pay attention to what it looks like. Right now, it's kind of like a yellow green, the broccoli is, right? So once it starts turning like a vibrant, like almost hunter green, you know your broccoli's ready. You can also smell it too. And just pay attention to the way it smells. If you feel like it's a really strong scent, then it's probably good to go. Same thing whenever you're cooking anything in the oven. If you smell it, it's probably done, or you probably put it on too high and it's burning. So you got to go and check on it, take it out, make adjustments as you need to. As you can see, we got a lot of different colors here. We always say different colored vegetables, different colored fruits when you're serving meals, because each color comes with different nutrients. And it's hard to memorize exactly what those nutrients are, so that's why we say a rainbow. If you just aim for a rainbow of fruits and vegetables, then you're covered, and you don't have to think too much about what you're adding, what nutrients you're missing. Just go ahead and eat a rainbow, and you should have it all covered. It's about constantly stirring. It's like sticking at the bottom, but if I scrape it just a little bit, it comes right off. Now, the other principle, like I mentioned before, is that we want to include at least 3 out of the 5 food groups for each meal. So right now, we have our veggies, right? We have broccoli, we have carrots, we have celery. It's a lot of different veggies, but again, that's just one food group. So we added tofu. And if you don't like tofu, you're not feeling adventurous, you can always use chicken for this recipe. You can always use beef for the recipe, you know? This is just a framework, but your protein can be a different variety of items, right? You can do a mix. You can do chicken and tofu to get your family used to something new if you're trying to be healthier. So with the tofu and the veggies, that's 2 groups. Our third group we've already done, and that's the brown rice, right? We try to include as many whole grains and introduce those as often as possible. In class, we do things like barley. We use whole wheat tortillas. We introduce people to quinoa, and that's the beauty of Cooking Matters, that more often than not, these families come in with a specific experiences, and so they don't have the opportunity to try new things, and that's what Cooking Matters does. It opens up people to new experiences, to try something that they might like or they don't like, but at least if they don't like it, then they got the opportunity to experience it. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and turn down the heat a little bit. Everything's trying to stick a little bit. And so at this point, I'm gonna go ahead and add my garlic. Remember, garlic goes last or it's gonna burn. That broccoli is already turning to a vibrant green. All right, you don't have to cook that garlic for too long. And then at this point, I'm gonna go ahead and add my sauce. Before you add the sauce, you kind of want to mix it one more time. The cornstarch sometimes goes to the bottom. All right, and so we're just gonna mix that sauce up. I know it might be a little misleading. We're not actually going to be stir frying the rice, and I wouldn't mix it with this particular mix. The idea is to serve your veggies and tofu on top of your brown rice after you serve it. If you mix it, it's going to dilute the sauce. I mean, you could mix it, but just make sure to make extra sauce, so that way the flavor isn't diluted. Okay, and so we're done with our recipe. We've got our tofu and veggies, and so then we have our brown rice. here as well. I'm gonna go ahead and move this out of the way and show you what the brown rice looks like. So again, the brown rice, it takes longer. It's a whole grain. There's more grain to cook, right? That's the best way to think about it. A lot of people, they try to cook it exactly like white rice, and then they're like, oh, it's too crunchy. It's not that it's too crunchy, but it's that it's not cooked all the way through, okay? But this is what it's supposed to look like. There's different kinds of rice. There's long grain, short grain, brown rice. There's even basmati brown rice, which I use for today's recipe, and it does get nice and fluffy, right? So, and again, the positive things about whole grains is that it has more nutrients and it has more fiber. All right, and again, fiber, it helps out to sweep out your intestinal tract. It also helps you stay full longer for a longer period of time, so you're not craving any snacks in between meals. And I feel like we get a lot of trouble when we're picking out our snacks. So just make sure that you're also picking your snacks wisely, okay? All right, so that is our demo. Again, we did brown rice and we did our veggie stir fry here. Okay. All right, and we can go ahead and open it up to questions now. Are there any questions from the panelists?
Not seeing anything pop up. Any last remarks, Luis? Such a great demonstration, by the way. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, just you know, cooking matters. It, like I said, it doesn't necessarily demonize any particular foods, but as we plan ahead of time, as we become more informed about how we read nutrition facts labels and what we're paying attention to, if we go shopping with a list, you know, these are all small little things that we want our participants to take away from the program so they can make healthier decisions for themselves as they graduate from the program, because it is just a 6-week course. Everybody wants it to be longer. They always want to come back. Unfortunately, we can't have repeat participants, but we always involve them again in the program as volunteers. And so that's the beauty of Cooking Matters, is that once you're done with the program, you can always give back and impart the knowledge that you got from the program with other people within your community.
Awesome, really great word. Well, thank you so much, Luis Hernandez, for this demonstration. Really, really great stuff. It looked delicious. My mouth was watering the entire time you were stirring it and preparing it. Thank you to all of our attendees for joining in and being here. And thank you to all the people who are watching from Facebook, as we've been live the entire time on that platform. Just to give everybody a little forecast of what's to come. So our 2 o'clock sessions are going to be starting soon. So we have the Save Energy, Save Money, Save the Planet with Minor Home Repairs session with Fresno EOC Energy Services. And then we also have the Electric Vehicle Replacement Program from Valley Can that will be happening as well. So hopefully we'll see some of you in those upcoming sessions. And once again, thank you so much and have a good rest of your day.
All right, thank you, Leo.
Thank you, Luis.